Welcome to my top 10 Swordmasters list. I based my list on everything from gameplay to personality and story. So since it's not only gameplay, this list is more of my favorite Swordmasters and not the very best ones. I'll also mention that this is one of my favorite Fire Emblem classes, so it has been one of the hardest lists to make for me. I never include any characters from games that I have yet to play, so any characters from Fire Emblem Fates will not be in this list. I haven't played Fire Emblem Fates when this video was made, so no characters from Fates will be on this video. I'll just mention that there might be spoilers about the characters in the video. This is pretty obvious, but now you have been warned. I'm going to start the list with some honorable mentions of characters that almost made it onto this list. Those being lon'qu from Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War, Fer from Fire Emblem Binding Blade, and Guy from Fire Emblem Blazing Sword. With that said, let's begin. Marina from Fire Emblem Thracia 776 takes the 10th place. Marina is Scald's daughter, but the two were separated when she was a little girl, and Marina was instead raised by Ivel, also known as Brigid. She grew up in Fianna with Nana and Leif as her close friends, and is therefore one of the more important characters to originate from Thracia 776. She's a tough girl with a strong will. Marina is never a person to give up easily. With her personal weapon that grants her the Nihil skill, Marina is your best choice to fight the monster known as Reinhardt. He's easily known as one of the most terrifying bosses in the series, so with Marina being the best option to oppose him, she definitely deserves a spot on this list. She's a great unit with amazing skills. Along with Nihil, she also has the skills like Luna, Astra and Adept. She has good growth, so you'll never have any problems with Marina. The reason as to why she'll only get a 10th place here is that she joins the army when I already have another Swordmaster that I find to be much better. She's stuck in the shadows of that other one, who will appear later on this list. So next we find a guy who probably was always supposed to be a Swordmaster, but actually first appeared as a mercenary. The reason being that the first games didn't have any Swordmasters. This has later been fixed in remakes though, so Nabar can surely be on my list. Nabal is the Swordmaster many others were based on. There have been plenty of enemy Swordmasters with a killing edge that you can recruit in the series, but Nabal was the first one. He's not exactly nice, but he's rather protective, refusing to harm women, going so far as to betray whoever he was with to join them instead. He's a unit you can always count on. It's not difficult training him, and it's very worth it. He's one of the better units in Morph's games, and you won't regret training him. Being from the first Fire Emblem game, his personality is rather bland, so he can't get a higher place for me when there are so many other Swordmasters that I love in the series. So if Nabal was the one that many others were based on, despite being a mercenary originally, who's the first real Myrmidon? The answer to that would be Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War's Ira. Ira is the princess of Isaac and is first introduced as an enemy unit. It can be tricky to recruit her, but it's not that difficult. You will not regret having to take the risk, as Ira will most likely be one of your better units in Generation 1, and her children will always turn out great. She's an amazing unit that will pass down Astra to both of her children, making them amazing as well. Her only downfall would be that she can't use holy weapons and that she isn't a mounted unit. She's a tough and strong girl tasked with protecting her nephew Shannon. She ends up joining Sigurd's forces after they rescued Shannon in Verdane. She stays with the army that grew to become her friends until the very end. Ira is sadly the only female in the army that isn't confirmed to have escaped Valhalla massacre, so her fate unfortunately remains really unknown. Ira did however manage to protect her nephew Shannon so that he could grow up and become an even better unit than she was, so he beat her by 1 place for me. Shannon arrives as a pre-promoted unit with great stats and skills like Astra. One conversation with Paddy later and will have his divine weapon Balmung, and after that Shannon will just breeze through the entire game. You will never ever have problems with this guy. He'll dodge most attacks in the game and you won't even have to put effort into him since he arrives already great. His only problem would be strength sometimes, but with a holy weapon that's not too big of a problem for him. Shannon is easily one of the more important characters in the entire game, appearing in both generations and being one of the people Seliph looks up to the most. With my dislike of Seliph, I've often wished Shannon to be the main character of Generation 2 instead. He would surely be a better and more fitting leader for the rebel army anyway. Shannon only got a 7th place because despite being an amazing unit, there are actually even better and more useful units in Generation 2. He has real tough competition, so I often end up not using him as much as many others, but he'll always be one of the coolest characters in my favorite Fire Emblem game. From one pre-promote to another one, Stefan appears in both Fire Emblem Path of Radiance and Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. In the latter one he arrives really late though, so he earned this spot almost entirely on his appearance in Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. Path of Radiance was my first Fire Emblem game, so it was the game that I learned how to play Fire Emblem with. On my early playthroughs, Stefan was essential for me. He was a unit that arrived great and remained great. He even came with the skill Astra, so you didn't have to waste an occult scroll on him. He usually kept strength as well, something not all Swordmasters do. While not as useful in Radiant Dawn due to arriving really late, he's still an amazing unit there, even though you most likely already have a True Blade just as good or better by then. What I like about Stefan, other than being one of the units I learned how to play Fire Emblem with, is that his recruitment is the most memorable and unique in the series in my opinion. Stefan is the only character in the series to be recruited by standing on a specific tile with a specific character. If you don't already know about those requirements, you'll most likely miss out on this character. He's a mysterious and interesting character, who also adds to the story a bit by being one of the more confident of the branded characters. To me, he will always be one of the more memorable Tellius characters. So entering the top 5 with lon'qu from Fire Emblem Awakening. The thing with that game is that I have used every character in it. Along with Sacred Stones, they're the only games I have done that with. lon'qu is always one of my most useful characters, which is quite a feat. He arrives pretty early and is easy to train. He gives a nice speed boost to slow characters and has no problem with fighting himself. I usually pair him with Cordelia, and the two of them together is probably my most useful duo in the game. He's the only Swordmaster you'll have for a while, until the Children Paralogs arrive or when you get to Vaughn. He's also one of the best dads gameplay-wise in the game. I don't think lon'qu has messed up a single child character I've had, and I've paired him with everyone. He's not only great gameplay-wise, I really like his character as well. He's got an interesting backstory and something I can relate with very much. I know how awful it is to have a phobia you have to deal with on a daily basis, so I can really relate to him there. I felt with lon'qu on several occasions in the game when someone teases him about his phobia, since that has happened to me all my life. lon'qu has some of my favorite supports in the entire game, so to me he was one of my favorite characters in Awakening. Then comes another character from Awakening that I liked even more. While I think that Owain has gotten a bit overhyped, I still appreciate him for the character he is and the humor that he brought to his game. No one can deny Owain that he's a very special and unique character. I can't think of any other character in the series that acts like he does. As a longtime fan that has played all the games, I loved the references Owain kept bringing to the game. He made me laugh more than most of the other characters in the game did. As a child character, Owain has the potential to become amazing depending on who his father is. I usually have Donnie as his father, so he pretty much maxes all the stats always for me. As a Swordmaster, he can already get some nice skills. His only negative that I can think of is that his mother can cause him to be rather frail. That's usually not a problem for me though, since Donnie makes up for that. I don't use the child characters too much on a basic playthrough of Awakening, since they arrive too late. lon'qu is already more than enough when Owain arrives, so I don't use him often on basic playthroughs. On more difficult ones, he's a great and very useful unit for me though. But the biggest reason as to Owain earn a 4th place on this list is that he's one of the most memorable characters from his game. He brought humor and laughter along with references to the games and characters I love from this series, so I'll always appreciate him. Mia from the Tellius games takes my 3rd place on this list. She was the first Swordmaster I ever had, and she was awesome. She's a great unit in both of the games she appears in, but especially so in Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. This is mostly due to her having Vantage, which is an amazing skill in Path of Radiance. She'll always attack first if the range allows it, so Mia equipped with something like a Killing Edge is amazing. The only problem she would have in that game is strength. Her cap is pretty low, so she can be weighed down by weapons. Her HP is also pretty low, so if she gets hit it'll hurt her a lot. She usually won't have much trouble with dodging though. In Radiant Dawn, Vantage has been heavily nerfed, so it doesn't make her that unique anymore. She can learn Astra easier now though, and she is really easy to train compared to other units in the game. So Mia will always be a monster of a unit that you'll never regret training. She's a happy and energetic person that seems to get along with anyone. She loves fighting and training and always goes all out. She likes training with people that doesn't hold back, and she always seeks to improve herself. I've always liked Mia's character, and she was really close on taking the second place, but it went to someone else. Who is none other than Joshua from Fire Emblem Sacred Stones. It might have to do with Sacred Stones probably being the easiest Fire Emblem game, but Joshua has always been a beast for me in every playthrough of the game, no matter which difficulty I'm playing. While not the very best in the game, he has always been one of the top candidates for me. For a Swordmaster, he has always been really strong for me. My Joshuas have always had high strength throughout the entire game. I have never had a weak Joshua, unlike many of the other characters on this list. He dodged most attacks in the game and killed pretty much everything. It's not difficult training him, so he'll always be a valuable unit. His only real weakness is lack of distance weapon, but that's something that concerns everyone on this list, so it's not something I will hold against him now. He's one of the more important characters in Erika's story, being the long-lost prince of Johanna, which is a big part of her story. His battle with Kalek in Erika's story is one of the more memorable battles in the game for me. I always liked Joshua's personality as well. He's a carefree and easygoing guy. He's also a kind and thoughtful person, but still has a funny personality. I pretty much like all of his supports in the game. Something else that I've always liked about Joshua is his design. He's got the best looking hat in the series for sure. He's an amazing unit, but there's one Swordmaster that is a legend for me, one that was the biggest reason that I cleared the most difficult game in the series. Winner of this list is Fire Emblem 776's Shiva. I'm going to take a guess that most of you have never heard of this guy, which is a shame because to me he's a legend. He's a hero that got me through the most difficult game in the series. I can with absolute certainty say that without Shiva, I wouldn't have beaten Frasia 776 to this day. Let's start with what is the biggest negative about Shiva, his story and character. Not that there's anything bad about it, just that there isn't much to go by. Shiva is a very Nabardish character, quiet, mysterious and protective. That's pretty much everything. Compared to a character like Joshua or Shannon, Shiva doesn't have much going for him here. Then how on earth did he take my first place? Well, you probably understood from my introduction of him that he's an amazing unit gameplay-wise. Shiva is a character that will cap almost all stats without much effort pretty early on. He's likely one of your earliest units to promote, and thanks to his rather high HP, he won't be fatigued very often. He's also got Soul, and he activates it often, so the chances of Shiva dying are low, even in a game like Frasia 776. I played the game when I still was fairly new to Fire Emblem, something that I don't recommend anyone to do. If you're going to play this game, save it for last. Save it until you know what you're doing. You don't want to go through what I did. It was horrible, a nightmare, but there in the hard time was a light, and that was Shiva. I'm not exaggerating when I say that he got me through that game. There were actual chapters that he pretty much soloed. I remember one in particular where all of my units that I used, barring two healers, Shiva and Leif, got fatigued. Leif wasn't very good and the healers were not reliable fighters, so it was up to Shiva alone to get me through. He did it flawlessly and never ever let me down during the entire game. I don't think another character in the entire series has been as important and valuable as Shiva was in Frasia 776. To me, no other character could win this list. There was no contest. Shiva is and always will be my number one Swordmaster. That's all for my top 10 Swordmaster list. Thanks for watching my video. You probably have a different opinion from mine, so do feel free to leave a comment about it if you want. I love hearing about other people's thoughts, so don't be afraid to share yours. Once again, thanks for watching my video. Feel free to watch some of my other videos if you have nothing better to do.